I'm writing this with frustration. I got out of a year-long relationship with my ex. My ex, who had been promiscuous before she met me, had told me she had been in open relationships. It took a while for the insecurity and jealousy to subside, but I eventually was excited to receive the same intimacy she gave so frequently to others, for free essentially. I showered her with love, attention, support, gifts, and was there emotionally and physically whenever she wanted. While some might consider this love bombing, I think I'm more than aware that it isn't because she reciprocated that verbally and physically to a degree. But we had only been physically intimate 3 times in a year. During our breakup, I asked her for clarification. Why not be frequently intimate with me as she was with them? No answer. We broke up, obviously. But something's been bothering me. I see posts similar to mine. Men like me, below average men who've never really experienced adult intimacy, healthy intimacy, genuine desire, and want from a female romantic partner. Yet we're vilified because people assume we're entitled to it. So, a genuine question, if I can't get intimacy in my own relationship, and it's so frustrating that even when communicating with my partner leads to nowhere, why is there this notion that men like me are entitled? Story 1. She just wasn't attracted to you the way she was with her previous partners. And some people will enter relationships with people they are not attracted to if it benefits them in some other way. Story 2. You did the right thing by ending it. Clearly, she wasn't into you. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting sex in your relationship, and if they're not willing to participate, you can move on to someone else who will. Story 3. If you're unhappy with her, then you don't have to date her. It goes both ways. I mean, I know you've already broken up, but I feel like for a lot of these kinds of questions, the various original posters forget that they also have a say in their relationships. So, while no one is truly entitled to anything, you do at least have the ability to decide who you spend your time with. As I've always said, in a normal and healthy relationship, intimacy and most everything else just feels simple. Story 4. My advice? Stop paying attention to anyone ranting and raving about this topic online. The people who claim to have all the answers on this subject have the most toxic relationships imaginable, or they are single. The people in healthy and happy relationships, they don't share that part of their life online or with anyone. Really. So just ignore the nonsense and stop worrying about what other people think. Story 5. Dude, she obviously wasn't attracted to you. She was promiscuous, and yet she only let you in her pants once every 4 months? She is not attracted to you. She only tolerated your relationship because you were love-bombing her. The lesson here is that you need to find a woman who actually likes you, instead of basically bribing a woman to be in a relationship with you. You tried to buy love with gifts and attention, and it didn't work. Stop pretending this is some kind of sociological issue. Just take the loss and move on. Story 6. Desiring physical intimacy in a relationship is not being entitled. People misuse terms all the time, especially on the internet, so I can't account for everyone else, but that is normal and it's not entitlement. If you desire physical intimacy from a relationship like most people, and she does not, which is unusual but not unheard of, then breaking up is the right move. If she does desire that in the abstract but isn't there with you, breaking up is the right move unless you're both on board with whatever sort of process or effort or time it takes to get there. No, various forms of doing things for or emoting at her don't automatically bridge that gap. People are different, and relationships involve seeing people as they are, meeting them where they are, them doing the same for you, and then figuring out how to communicate honestly and fully as much as possible and moving forward together. However, thinking that I've done something, so I think she should do something else is on the path toward being entitled. People are all different. If you believe that something you did for someone else means they owe you intimacy, that's entitlement. If whatever you are doing in total doesn't result in her wanting to be physically intimate with you more than 3 times a year, either she is not or won't be attracted to you, in which case it's time to break up, or whatever it is she needs to be attracted to you in that way is not there. That gap can only be bridged through communication with the person in question, not through doubling down on what you think should work or by asking strangers what they think should work. I have seen people who were promiscuous before loving relationships have no issues with lots of sex in those new relationships. I've also seen them struggle with sex in those situations because sex to them was linked to coercion and lots of unhealthy emotions and behaviors that weren't love, which can take time and mutual work to overcome. In such situations, one partner is not entitled to the other's support while they work through issues, and the other is not entitled to the one's body during the time they can't engage in that consistently without being unhealthy. Both can choose to work through that together, and either can choose not to and to break up instead. Relationships are different from casual sex, and if you start from the position that a partner who was promiscuous in the past is doing you wrong or withholding something in the present if you aren't having a lot of sex, then you are feeling entitled because that is as irrelevant to you and your relationship as a partner's previous virginity would be. Seriously, would you give a second thought to a partner saying, "You used to be a virgin, so we should never have sex"? No, that's a crazy thing to say, and it's the exact same as saying, "You used to be promiscuous, so we should be having lots of sex." A person's sexual past is essentially irrelevant to the present relationship and desire and need. Navigate the relationship you have now with the person you are in it with by learning their needs and expressing your own. Don't act as if their past is defining, or that what you have decided to give to them must therefore have the result you think it should have, because you think it should have that result, without regard to how that impacts or affects the other person and whether or not it actually meets their needs or desires. Story 7. While you are not entitled to intimacy, you also are not obligated to stay with a partner who does not satisfy your needs and desires. You start hearing the word entitled around this topic from people who do not have a healthy perspective on relationships. Your partner should want to make you happy, and you should be a priority to them. They are not obligated to do this, but they want to because they love you. There are a lot of things I do not need to do for my wife, but I still do them because it makes her happy, and I want her to be happy. The fact that I need to explain the most basic tenet of a relationship really goes to show how toxic and far off the deep end some people can be. Story 8. Why not be frequently intimate with me as she was with them? No answer. Because she wasn't very sexually attracted to you. Simple as that. While people do have a base libido, it is still influenced by their attraction to a specific partner. Hormones are very powerful. Story 9. No one thinks people like you are entitled. People think individuals who say, "I paid for her dinner, so that should get me something," are entitled because that's the definition of entitlement. In this situation, you chose a poor partner that was most likely using you. That is unfortunate. Be the best version of yourself you can be, and don't force relationships or you'll always feel like you like her more than she likes you. Story 10. You had a poor relationship with a girl who didn't really value you, and you stayed due to misplaced hope, probably a bit of sunk cost fallacy, and maybe some fear of being single afterwards. It is unfortunate that you had to go through that. Just try to remember that relationships are complicated and messy, and there's no universal narrative that describes every situation. If everything you said is true, then I agree with you. It had nothing to do with entitlement. Your partner wasn't meeting your needs. You probably should have cut your losses and left her sooner. But try to understand where the sentiment of men are entitled comes from. There are unfortunately many men who think that women are like vending machines where you put compliments, gifts, and dates in, and then sex comes out. If they don't get sex fast enough or often enough, they become mean. This type of awful guy is common enough that most women keep their guard up by default. Story 11. Don't let other people's opinions get in the way of your happiness. As a disclaimer, there might be a language barrier which might be causing this, but your post seems a tad bitter, which is understandable, and many times that will give people a feeling of discomfort and cause them to use this entitlement argument. My wife and I have struggled with intimacy at times in the past. I have zero shame in being upfront that needs to change when it happens, and I expect her to put in effort to ensure it's not a problem. Some people will criticize me for that. Let them. It's my marriage. We're all allowed to have expectations in a relationship. Your partner also has the choice to either meet them or leave. My wife expects me to be monogamous. She expects me to be kind to her and her family, whom I dislike. She expects me to prioritize her, pay attention to her, and be thoughtful of her needs. None of this is really burdensome to me, but they are things she requires of me to continue to have a relationship. I have expectations of her as well, and I don't feel bad about that. Story 12. Look, you cannot control how someone else feels or what they choose to do. If your partner is not interested in intimacy, You cannot change their mind. What you can do is control yourself and your choices. You need to decide if you are willing to be with a partner who does not desire intimacy with you. If the answer to that question is no, then stop pursuing the relationship. Story 13. That's their go-to shaming tactic, which comes from people who lack empathy. Don't associate yourself with them. They simply lack the empathy for a man who is having relationship issues. Story 14. Being in a relationship is a mutual agreement by both people to take care of each other's needs. Inherently, that includes intimacy. Your score plays no part in the matter. However, that agreement comes with the understanding that the partner is eager, or at least happy, to fulfill those needs. If they don't want to and consistently don't want to if treated right, then there are deeper problems in the relationship that one side cannot fix. In other words, being in a relationship inherently entitles you to intimacy. The frequency, type, and depth vary between couples, but it is simply the entire point. You were neglected by her, and she refused to elaborate why or communicate ways you could help inspire her. I'm sorry you were stuck with such a person for a year. Story 15. Where does this notion of entitled come from? If we are to believe the theory, it's from women who settled for guys particularly referred to as beta bucks. You know, the guys who are barely average in looks, height, charisma, etc., but have just enough money to be a man and provide for a woman who couldn't lock down those one-night stands with supposedly responsible men, right? Imagine telling people you barely get intimacy from someone who supposedly finds you attractive enough to be with long-term. It's obviously coming from women who are miserable with their guy they settled with because they're simply not attracted to them. Story 16. If she isn't willing to have sex enthusiastically with you, then she isn't attracted to you, and no amount of gifts and love will change that. Men, if your girlfriend isn't attracted to you, doesn't make you feel desired, isn't looking forward to intimate moments, then she doesn't want you. Only be with women who want you, not someone who puts up with you, especially if you are the one providing. A man can be broke and unemployed, and if his woman wants him, none of that matters. They both will have a connection. It's about being desired by the partners. Story 17. For free, essentially. I showered her with love, attention, support, and gifts, and I was there emotionally and physically whenever she wanted. This bit is your problem. You're looking at the relationship transactionally. You do sound like you thought your attention entitled you to sex with her. Nothing entitles anyone to sex with anyone. I'm married, and if my wife decides she doesn't want sex with me, I'm leaving her. But it won't be because I'm entitled to sex with her, but because I consider that part of the relationship I want. This girl wasn't for you. Try again, but change your mindset first. Story 18. Women may call me insecure or entitled, but I see too many cases of women having a high libido with everyone besides the man she wants a relationship with. It makes no sense. If she had sex with other men, what makes you different? I'll assume they aren't attracted to the boyfriend and just want the safety net. Story 19. So just because someone was promiscuous in the past doesn't mean they owe you the same thing. However, feeling like they respected, were attracted to, or were more available to other partners are valid feelings that you have, and it hurts to feel that way. It definitely affects your self-worth, self-confidence, and happiness. But the problem isn't them, it's you, and you aren't compatible with this person. You can't try to change them back into their past selves. That's unethical. They may not like their former self, and their new self is what makes them happy. You have no right to demand they be their old self. Instead, you should just seek someone else that can give you what you want. Story 20. One person's entitled is another person's reasonable standards. Your ex just didn't want to confront the sad reality that she stayed with someone she wasn't attracted to nor liked for benefits. That's just ugly behavior. Straight up bum stuff. So, in an attempt to soothe herself, she has to paint you as someone who felt entitled to her body. When, in reality, if any man or any woman she actually cared about was in a relationship like the one she put you through, she'd be ready to fight. The self-awareness is just that weak. Story 21. What would be your answer if a below-average woman asked, "Why didn't my ex reciprocate my advances? I showered him with attention." There's nothing wrong with wanting reciprocation and physical chemistry. You shouldn't have showered him with attention if it wasn't reciprocated and should have left sooner. Story 22. Don't take this the wrong way, but if you want healthy intimacy, then maybe try it with healthy people. I know I'll be criticized by the enlightened Reddit mob, but out here in the real world, very few people are actually in open relationships, and very few of them are actually well-adjusted people. Story 23. Where does this notion of entitled come from? Most people in this thread focus on your relationship with your ex, but let me talk about this particular line. This notion comes from a particularly vindictive and misandrous branch of feminism, one that is most prominent online, that is supremely uncharitable towards men and doesn't really see them as people. The fundamental idea regarding gender relations of this branch is that men are eternally indebted to women because somehow men collectively have to atone for misdeeds they individually had no part in, which have been suffered by women they have never met, and have to do anything to accommodate them, while simultaneously any expectation men may hold is by definition illegitimate. In other words, while the man owes the woman literally everything and then some, the woman owes him nothing at all, and he should be eternally grateful for the meager scraps of affection she throws at him. Of course, this stance is borderline sociopathic in its selfishness, but I have met women who literally think that way. In a context like the one here, they conflate the perfectly legitimate desire for intimacy with your partner with an abusive relationship where the guy is treating his girlfriend as his glorified prostitute who has to provide him with sex whenever he asks for it, and paint the poor soul who resents a sexless relationship as a borderline rapist for having that desire. How can you find out you're dealing with the type of feminist I described? Well, you do when you tell her about your situation, because for that type, you'll be the bad guy no matter what. You are the bad guy for asking for sex, you are the bad guy if you respect her wishes but break up over it, and even if you wouldn't dump her over it, you'd still be the bad guy for daring to want sex in the first place. Either way, you can't win, and the only way to absolve yourself of your sins is to respect women even harder and be even more of a doormat towards your girlfriend in the future. Whether your ex belonged to that category is something that isn't made clear, but you're better off for leaving her and should in fact have done so far sooner.